Professor Avi Loeb, Dr. Avi Loeb, he's joining us actually right now. Professor, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Good to see you, sir. So
Yes.
I know a lot has changed since the last time we spoke about 3I Atlas, but what are the biggest updates that you want to share with us today?
Well, several things. First, we were able, together with two of my colleagues, we were able to compile 4,000 observations from 227 observatories around the globe of 3I Atlas, the way it moved across the sky. And we found that it did not deviate at all from a trajectory that is shaped by gravity. But that is a surprise because we know that it was losing 150 kilograms every second in the direction of the sky, of the sun. We see that from the image of the Hubble Space Telescope that was taken on July 21st. And losing mass in a preferred direction is supposed to push the object in the opposite direction. So there was a force acting on it as a result of its evaporation, and that did not introduce itself into the trajectory. So for that to be the case, the object needs to be very massive, so it doesn't care about that force. And I calculated that it needs to be more massive than 33 billion tons. And that means that at solid density, it needs to have a diameter bigger than 5 kilometers, the width of Manhattan Island. But that is just a lower limit. And the question is, what is the real size? And we hope to find out by the end of this week, because it will pass within 29 million kilometers from Mars. And there are several orbiters around Mars that could take an image of it. One of them is the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter of NASA that has a camera called HiRISE that could take a high-resolution image with a pixel size of 30 kilometers of this object. So the brightest pixel in that image will inform us about the surface area of 3I Atlas. And just stay tuned. If the bigger it is, the more anomalous it is, because there is not enough material to provide a rock of that size once per decade from interstellar space. We know how much material there is per unit volume out there, and it would be really anomalous the bigger it is. It's also at least 1,000 times more massive than the previous interstellar object, Borisov. And the question arises as to why didn't we see 1,000 objects the size of Borisov, which was of order twice the size of a football field. Compare that to the size of Manhattan Island. That's what the disparity we're talking about, and that makes 3I Atlas anomalous. Now, in addition to that, there is also a report about nickel around that was shed by 3I Atlas, and without showing any evidence for iron, and that is quite anomalous, because usually nickel and iron come in similar quantities in comets. And the question is, why is there mostly nickel? And one possibility is that nickel is much more abundant in industrial production of nickel alloys, and so maybe it is technological. But finally, I should say that I noticed that the direction from where 3I Atlas came is coincident with the direction of a radio signal that was discovered on August 15th, 1977. The person who discovered it wrote "wow" next to the discovery chart, and it's called the wow signal. It was definitely extraterrestrial. We didn't know where it comes from. And the two directions of 3I Atlas and the signal from 1977 are aligned within 9 degrees. So the chance of that happening at random is 0.6%. And the question arises as to whether 3I Atlas transmitted this wow signal. And I'm encouraging any radio observatories to check whether there is any radio transmission from 3I Atlas. So far, we haven't had any reports. The other thing that I did was write a letter to the United Nations, encouraging them to establish a committee. Now that we are in a new era of discovering interstellar objects, the Rubin Observatory that was just inaugurated is expected to find an interstellar object every few months. We need an organization that is international, that looks at outliers, objects that have anomalies, and assesses whether any of them could be a threat to humanity. Any of them might be technological in origin. Such an organization does not exist, and I proposed establishing a committee that would look into that.
Wow.
There's a lot to unpack.
So much.
I love the New York Times take on this. This is, we're going to need a bigger telescope, kind of off the Jaws movie line. Professor, just to make sure I'm clear, interstellar means it came from outside the solar system, right?
Yes.
And once it goes by Mars, is it, I don't know, heading in our direction then, or do we know just yet?
No, so during the month of October, so it comes closest to Mars on October 3rd, which is Friday this week, in 2 days. And it will come within 29 million kilometers from Mars, and then it will approach closer to the sun. The closest to the sun time would be October 29th. And then we won't be able to see it throughout the month of October from Earth, because the Earth is on the opposite side of the sun. The sun is in between us and 3I Atlas. And one wonders whether that was for a purpose. The point of closest approach to the sun is usually the best for getting gravitational assist from the sun if the object wants to maneuver. So we won't be able to see it doing any of that. But if it comes on the other side of the sun in a different trajectory, obviously, the stock market will crash, because it would mean that, it's not a rock. But after that, November, it will be visible to us during November. And actually, the closest distance from Earth would be accomplished in December. And then it comes close to Jupiter on March 16th, 2026. And after that, it's supposed to leave the solar system, as long as it will not maneuver. And another question, a related question, is whether, if it's technological, would it release any probes into the solar system that would come close to the planets? And I asked my research team, we have 3 observatories within the Galileo project that we put in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. And I asked them to monitor the data and see if there's any unusual activity around Earth in the months that follow the closest approach of 3I Atlas.
Avi, I want to ask you real quick. We've got a couple of minutes before we go to break, and if you could hang with us for just a little bit longer.
Sure.
But one of our viewers said that they saw a headline today about the object showing an extreme negative polarization.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, in fact, I wrote about it a week ago. It means that this object has the light that we see from its vicinity is polarized, the way that when you look on a hot day at an asphalt road, the light is polarized. That's why when you put sunglasses, you're blocking much of this light. So the question is, why is it so negatively polarized, differently from comets that we have seen before? And one possible reason for that is we noticed in the Hubble image that there is a glow towards the sun, a glow in front of the object towards the sun, not behind the object, the way we see in cometary tails, where you have dust that gets pushed back and it's trailing the object away from the sun. These are the cometary tails that we are used to. But for 3I Atlas, during the months of July and August, we saw a glow that extends towards the sun. It was 10 times longer than it was wide. And my guess is that when we detect the light from that glow, that it's unusually polarized because of this geometry of, it's like having a cat with a tail coming from its forehead. And speaking about that, just think about an animal coming to your backyard at night, and all the people who look at the image say, oh, we see a tail, but you tell them, well, but this tail comes from the forehead. And moreover, the animal, and so they say, well, it's probably a street cat. But you say, but the street cat has a tail coming from its rear end. And moreover, this object is at least 1,000 times more massive than the last street cat that came over. And,
Wow.
so what is it? It's and it's shedding nickel without iron.
Yeah, that's
Oh my
all.
gosh.
And it's visiting, coming close to assets in your backyard. So it's really, it could be a nightmare scenario. I call it also a black swan situation if it turns out to be technological.
Your letter to the United Nations about organizing a committee for them to develop a plan of what will they do if this object turns out to be an alien intelligence that we need to take seriously.
I think so, because the intelligence agencies often prepare plans, contingency plans for black swan events that might have a low probability, but when they happen, you want to be prepared. And in this case, it could be a threat to humanity that is very different from rocks falling from the sky. That's what we are preparing ourselves for, knowing that the dinosaurs were killed by a giant asteroid. But if there is a technological object approaching us, all bets are off. It would behave very differently. And just think about ants in the crack of a pavement looking up and seeing a biker that is passing by. They would have a hard time conversing with the biker or doing anything that would change the path of the biker. And we might be in the same situation. And we better find how we want to respond to different scenarios. And of course, the devil is in the details. We need to know as much as possible about the other side before we decide what to do. It's not clear we can communicate with the other side. It's not clear we can protect ourselves, but we should be ready. And frankly, I think such an encounter will bring humanity to a better place, because as of now, we are just focusing most of our attention on a daily basis on conflicts here on Earth. If there is a threat from the sky, it might bring people together because we are all in the same boat.
Right.
I want to ask you real quick, Professor, too, just to follow up on that. Do you feel like in the last few years, when you are discussing this topic with business leaders, with world leaders in your communication, do you feel like the reception is a little more open than previously with the previous interstellar object, Momoa, that they are a little more open to taking this potential threat more seriously than they were?
Well, it's definitely true about the public, because, I write essays on medium.com on a daily basis. And now in one day, I get as many views, for the 60,000 views that I used to get per month. And so that means the public really cares about it. I had a message from a former pilot in the US Air Force who said that because of you, my daughter is now interested in becoming a scientist. She saw you on television and she would like to do that. And so I think it's inspiring to young kids. They find that science could be exciting. It's not like sitting in a classroom and listening to the lecturer telling us what we need to know. Instead, it's a work in progress, and we collect data and evidence that will tell us what this object is. And the beauty of this is we can see it unfolding in real time. And so I do feel that the public definitely cares more about it. With respect to politicians, it will take a real encounter that is verified to change the mindset of politicians or people in the financial markets, because such an event will have huge implications, potential implications. Once we verify that we encountered alien technology, I think we will start allocating a significant fraction of the budget we currently allocate to military expenses. We will allocate it to space exploration. We would put a system of interceptors or probes that would alert the Earth for any incoming threat. We will change the way we think about our place in the universe. It might inspire us to explore space much more than we do right now. So I think altogether it will have spiritual implications. It will have political, economic implications. I think it's an extremely important subject, but people will not recognize it. Politicians will not pay attention to it until it actually happens for the first time, and then everything will change.
That's how humans are, aren't we?
Right.
Well, it's too late for me. You inspired me to sell all my 401k and just to start spending it immediately. So thanks for that update. Dr. Loeb, we appreciate your time as always, and
Thank you, sir.
hopefully we can talk to you again soon.
Thanks for